We all know the story of the Titanic, but did you know that there were a few cursed items on board? Many people believe these cursed items are the reason for the tragic events of the voyage. Many years ago, the Princess of Amun-Ra was laid to rest in an ornate wooden coffin and buried deep in the vault on the banks of the Nile. Years later, in the 1890s, 4 rich young Englishmen visited the excavation site. They were invited to buy the mummy case containing the remains of the princess. They took the coffin back to their hotel ready to transport it onward. A few hours into the night, he was seen walking out into the desert. He was never seen again. The next day, one of the 3 remaining men was accidentally shot. He lost his arm but survived the incident. The 3rd man lost his entire life savings and the bank holding his money was destroyed. The final man suffered a severe illness, lost his job and was forced to live on the streets. Within the first 6 months, the 4 men had been destroyed by the curse. The coffin was then shipped to England where it was bought by a London businessman. The coffin continued to torment and curse anyone who owned it. Many people passed away due to being associated with the relic. After the coffin gained a lot of attention, a hard-headed American archaeologist purchased and paid a great price to have it shipped to New York. He dismissed everything that had happened preceding this as being quirks of circumstance or many coincidences. The man flew to London to escort his great treasure to New York aboard the brand new White Star liner on its maiden voyage. Of course, as we know, on April 15th, 1912, the Titanic sunk to the bottom of the Atlantic, taking with it the ancient Amun-Ra's princess. When the Titanic was found and the relics on board recovered, only the lid of the coffin was recovered. It now sits on display behind protective glass at the British Museum. Some people have still commented about paranormal activity near the lid, but it seems the loss of the contents it held has diminished its power. Coming in at number 4, we have the Great Omar. The company Sangorski and Sutcliffe are known for their practice of binding books, something that was popular in the Middle Ages, but they resurrected the craft. Their books were bound in expensive materials with intricate designs. The company was founded in 1901 and grew in popularity quickly. They used real gold, jewels and precious stones. They had a high-class clientele. Their most famous work was the Great Omar. When this piece was commissioned, they were told the cost was not to be considered. They made this their greatest piece, outdoing all of their previous efforts. They worked for 2.5 years to create the most beautiful binding with thousands of jewels. Although it was beautiful, it is believed it had an ancient curse attached to it, that at some point during its creation a great evil attached itself to the piece. When it was finished in 1911, it was listed for sale. It sold for £1,000, which would be worth around $120,000 today. It was shipped to New York but returned by the buyers when they refused to pay the custom fee. When it was returned to England, they relisted and sold the book again for half of the initial price. It was once again sold to an American buyer. They had the book scheduled to ship, but the transport left without the book on board. They scrambled to find the next available way to get the book to the buyer. It was placed aboard the luxury liner, the Titanic. The book was never recovered from the wreckage of the Titanic. This was only the beginning of the misfortune for the book's creators. Just a few weeks later, Sangorski drowned trying to save a drowning woman. They did recreate the book, but once again it was destroyed during the London bombings of World War II. Coming in at number 3, we have Love Letter. Many things were recovered from the Titanic that told the story of the people on board and the events leading up to the devastating collision. Richard Geddes, one of the ship's stewards, had left his wife behind in England to work on the ship. Many of the stewards wrote letters to their family while at sea. Unfortunately, Richard was one of the unlucky 1,500 passengers left on the ship when it sank to the bottom of the ocean. Most of the letters are your typical letters to loved ones, but this one contained details of what others now see as a bad omen. Something happened within the first days of the voyage that may have indicated that the trip was doomed from the very start. The letter details a close call collision the Titanic had with a smaller ship, the SS City of New York. The 2 vessels came within a couple of feet of one another as the Titanic left the docks. The suction from the propellers of the Titanic caused the City of New York's ropes to snap. This released the boat, causing a new collision that the captain avoided. Some say if they had collided, maybe it would have saved their lives. The delay might have made them days or even hours late when crossing the iceberg, and even a few seconds difference can change everything. The rest of the letter is saddening to read, with the seaman telling his wife that she did not need to worry, he was safe and would be home soon. He explained the Titanic felt like a sturdy ship and there would be no issues going forward. Yikes. Well, it was cursed from the beginning when they called it the unsinkable ship. Coming in at number 2, we have the pocket watch. A pocket watch that had belonged to John Chapman was recovered from the wreckage. He was traveling with his wife Sarah. It might seem like an old rusty watch that had been lying at the bottom of the ocean, but there was something strange about it that no one had been able to figure out since it was found. The story of John and his wife was a tragic one. They had been at a party with some of the first-class guests on the night the ship sank. At some point in the night, they got separated when the ship hit the iceberg. His wife Sarah was with the other wives from the party, and they got taken to one of the lifeboats. Sarah soon realized that she would have to go alone, that John would not find her here, and even if he did, he may not be allowed to enter the boat. She made the decision and told the other women, if John can't go, I won't go either. She got off the boat to find her husband. It is not known if she ever did find him before the boat sank. John's body was recovered, but Sarah was never found. It's believed that he had his watch on him during the time that the ship sank, but the watch froze in time. It is still frozen to this day. The watch stopped ticking the moment the iceberg hit the ship. The curious thing about this is that the first impact was not the worst. The shock should not have been so large as to disrupt something as small as a pocket watch. Many have found this to be interesting. Why did the time stop at that moment? This is not the only curious thing about the watch. Since it was bought at an auction, the owner had reported some paranormal activity. They have claimed to have heard a voice coming from within their walls. It's unclear to them what it says, but it sounds distressful. Could it be the spirit of John looking for his lost love Sarah? And finally, in at number 1, we have the Heart of the Ocean. We all know the story of the Heart of the Ocean from the film, but the real story is much different. It still tells the story of romance and tragedy. Some believe that the real necklace was cursed and may have been the cause for the tragic events of the sinking ship. The story starts with Kate, who might have been the inspiration for the character Rose in the blockbuster film. Kate was having an affair with a married man named Henry Morley. Henry wanted to be with Kate, but it would not have been wise to leave his wife and live with Kate in their current home. He decided that they would run away together. He decided that they would start a new life under new names. They decided to secretly board the Titanic under fake names and begin their new lives. The pair met when she began working in a sweet shop. It was said he secretly made plans to leave with his lover and even sold a couple of his stores. He kept his running away a secret from everyone except his brother, who drove them to the boat. In the months running up to them sailing, he had a necklace commissioned to give Kate after they boarded the ship. It is rumored that his wife may have found out about the plan, keeping it to herself but somehow cursing the couple. Some believe it was her anger that cursed the necklace so that their new life would never be. They boarded the ship and he gifted Kate the necklace. They looked forward to starting their new life together. When the boat began to sink, Kate was put into a lifeboat along with the other women and children. Henry did not want her to go. He clung to her, but the sailors threw her in the boat. Henry's body was never recovered. Kate spent a few months in New York after she was rescued. She was planning to start her new life under the names he had chosen. It was when she realized that she was pregnant that she felt the need to go home. Kate could never tell her child about her father, Henry, as she found it too painful. She was later admitted to an asylum, unable to deal with the event and trauma of the Titanic. Many believe the Heart of the Ocean is responsible for destroying not only the lives of these lovers, but of everyone who was on board the Titanic. Coming in at number 5, we have the Myrtle Plantation mirror. Mirrors are said to connect the world of the living to the world of the dead, and this 200-year-old mirror is apparently doing just that. The 2013 horror film Oculus already ruined mirrors for me, but the Myrtle Plantation mirror just makes it worse. It's beautifully ornate and trimmed in gold, but you might catch a glimpse of something else or someone else staring back at you in it. Myrtle's Plantation is located in the deep south, specifically Louisiana. The 18th century plantation is regarded as one of America's most haunted homes, although there could be a novel written about all of the ghostly legends set on the historic property. The most famous is that of the mirror. According to local legend, a slave girl named Chloe baked a cake laced with poisonous ingredients for the prominent Woodruff family, killing 2 of the family members in the process. There's speculation on whether she meant to kill them or simply make them sick. The other slaves, scared they would get the blame, took justice into their own hands and hanged Chloe. Now her spirit roams the property. However, the people she killed are said to reside inside of the mirror. People have reported seeing apparitions dressed in old-fashioned clothing looking back at them. Strange drip marks also mysteriously appear running the length of the mirror. The property has no shortage of paranormal activity and has been the source of many convincing ghost pictures. Whether the mirror is responsible for the surge in supernatural happenings or not, I still wouldn't look into it without saying a prayer before. I just wouldn't look into it at all, to be honest. In at number 4 we have Anna Baker wedding dress. Forbidden love, upper class versus lower class, a disapproving father. The story of Anna Baker could be a Shakespearean tragedy. Anna's wedding dress is a haunted relic reminiscent of what she lost, what she could never have, and what she could never let go of. Its purported hauntedness is more sad than scary. In 1849, the Baker family was one of high esteem in the small town of Altoona, Pennsylvania. As an upper class family, naturally the Bakers lived in a big beautiful mansion, one that still stands today and serves as a historical museum. Elias Baker was the patriarch of the family, and he ruled with an iron fist, literally. Their fortune was made through ironworking, with Elias serving as an iron master. His daughter Anna, who much to his dismay fell in love with a poor steel worker. With an obsession for wealth and social classes, Elias forbade his daughter from seeing the man she loved. Their short-lived romance ended abruptly, and Anna never got to wear her beloved wedding dress. Bitter and broken-hearted, Anna locked herself away and refused to ever marry. The town branded her as crazy because of her antisocial behavior, and the maids would often catch her dancing around the Baker mansion in her unused wedding dress. Legends say that once her father died, she visited the only man she ever loved and found him happily settled down with another woman. Anna died lonely, broken-hearted, and angry at her father. Today, her wedding dress is put away to properly preserve the historical garment, but it used to rest behind a case in the Baker Mansion Museum. There were many reports of the glass case violently shaking as if someone was trying to get at the dress inside. Anna's wedding dress would also move on its own, seemingly swaying along with the ghost inhabiting it. Anger and sadness is said to have manifested in Anna Baker's wedding dress, making it an extremely haunted item. Coming in at number 3 we have Peggy the doll. Warning, just looking at pictures or videos of this haunted doll can apparently make you violently ill. So if you have to say your prayers before even looking at her, I would recommend steering clear from this doll. Or say a prayer right now because I'm sure the editor's going to show a picture. Peggy the doll may look cute with her wide eyes and Doris Day haircut, but she's inhabited by an evil and impish spirit. UK-based paranormal investigator Jane Harris used to own her and says that she received a plethora of messages from people claiming to have gotten seriously sick after watching a video of her doll. Reports include chest pains, nausea, crippling headaches, and general anxiety. One woman even claimed to have suffered a heart attack. Peggy the doll can do more than just make you sick, however. People claim to experience paranormal activity in their own homes after just looking at the doll online. One woman told Jane that after opening a picture of Peggy, her computer froze and she felt a strong presence in her room. Another lady said light bulbs in her home blew after simply mentioning the haunted doll's name. Oh, I've said her name many times. Come for me, Peggy. The previous owner of Peggy also reported a series of strange occurrences. She was experiencing terrifying nightmares and eventually fell extremely ill with a fever. After recovering, she sent the doll packing into the hands of Jane, who had similar experiences. 4 separate mediums have said a restless and frustrated spirit lives within the doll. It's also believed to be the spirit of a woman from 1946 who died of a chest-related condition. Who is actually inhabiting her is unknown, but the spirit is thought to be evil. Peggy the doll now resides in Zach Bagan's haunted museum, where she continues to haunt the living. In at number 2 we have Thomas Busby's stoop chair. Known as the dead man's chair, this supposedly haunted oak chair is said to be cursed by a murderer, so say your prayers before taking a seat. Plagued by the 300-year-old curse, this chair is now displayed in the UK with its legs off the ground so no one can sit in it. In 1702, Thomas Busby brutally murdered his father-in-law. Some say he was strangled and the others say he was bludgeoned. According to local legend, his father-in-law provoked him by sitting in his chair without permission, and chaos ensued. In a fit of rage, Busby killed the man and was convicted for the murder. His punishment was death by hanging, but he was granted a final request to have a stiff drink in his chair one last time. Minutes before his execution, it said that Thomas Busby cursed his chair, saying, "Death shall come swiftly to anyone that dares to sit in my chair," and it seems like he kept his promise. Over the next couple centuries, many people fell victim to the apparent hex. A chimney sweeper died after resting in it. Whether he took his own life or fell off the roof while working is unknown. Another man was found dead after sitting in it due to a mysterious accident. There are also stories of soldiers from World War II who dared to take a seat and they never returned home. Because of the long list of incidents with Busby's death chair, it was donated to a museum and will hopefully never touch the floor ever again. And finally, in at number 1 we have the hands resist them. There's just something so spooky and unnerving about this terrifying piece of art by Bill Stoneham. Perhaps it's the boy's hollow eyes, or the lifeless doll, or even the disembodied children's hands. Either way, what's most disturbing is what happens to those brave enough to come in contact with it. So if you don't want to suffer the same fate, maybe say a prayer or two first. Painted in 1972, Bill Stoneham based the piece of art on an old photograph of himself from when he was 5. Little did he know his work would go on to be one of the most famous cursed paintings in history. The hands resist them gained notoriety after the 3 closest men to the painting died. Stoneham turned the painting over to Charles Feingarten for his art gallery in 1974, where it was purchased by actor John Marley, most famous for his role as the movie producer in The Godfather, who wakes up next to the severed head of his prized horse in his bed. His first media mention was by art critic Henry Seldis. By 1984, all 3 of these men were dead. The piece of art disappeared for years after this, but it resurfaced on eBay in 2000, and the posting was chilling to say the least. The seller claimed that the painting was haunted and that their children were being tormented by it. The kids said that they would see the boy and the doll in the painting fight and would be visited by them in the room at night. The dad was skeptical, of course, until he set up a camera and saw the boy crawl from the painting. He quickly listed it on eBay with a disclaimer, and it became an internet sensation. People began having paranormal experiences just by looking at the listing, hearing voices in their homes, and becoming very ill.
Starting off this countdown, we have Mary Todd Lincoln's dress. This beautiful dress was once owned by Mary Todd Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's wife. It's a beautiful purple velvet dress with satin and lace detailing. She wore this dress during the Washington winter social season in 1861 to 62. But here's the thing. After her husband's death, Mary went into mourning for a long period of time. In fact, she stayed in widow's clothes up until her own death in 1882. So she had no use for this dress anymore. So she gave this dress and some of her other items to her family members. This dress was given to her cousin Elizabeth Todd Grimsley. In 1916, Grimsley's son sold the dress to the Smithsonian's First Ladies collection. And now, apparently, it's haunted by Mary Todd herself. People have heard weeping when they have been near this dress. On a number of occasions, they have actually seen Mary Todd Lincoln's apparition by the dress. Thankfully, she means no harm. But if you think about it, it's quite sad. Even in the afterlife, she's still mourning over the loss of her husband. Hopefully, she can eventually find peace and reunite with him. Moving on to number 4, we have the Smithsonian. One of the most haunted items in the Smithsonian is the museum itself. It is haunted by a number of ghosts. As a result, they actually offer ghost tours on location for people interested in the paranormal. On a number of occasions, workers have seen past Smithsonian scientists who would work on the collections there. But the most active ghost is that of the Smithsonian's first curator and second secretary, Spencer Fullerton Bard. Almost all of the night guards at the Smithsonian have seen his ghost wandering the halls. They see him gliding through the halls, people try to talk to him, and then he disappears into thin air. Then you have the ghost of Secretary Joseph Henry that also likes to show his face around town. According to the night guards, they said, and I quote, "Henry is often seen fully clothed in the garments he wore in life, walking through the exhibits before returning to his post." His post being the statue the museum has in place for him. Dude, what in the night of the museum is this? Seriously. Then you have the countless unidentified entities that also haunt the halls. These are just like black shadowy figures people have seen in passing. At least it seems like these ghosts mean no harm. Like, sure, it's kinda spooky, but at least they aren't malicious. Also, hit that thumbs up button if you want to see me go ghost hunting at the Smithsonian. I'm down. I'm down. In our third spot today, we have the ancient Egyptian treasures. Rumor has it that a number of treasures or artifacts from ancient Egypt are cursed. I mean, you all know about King Tut's curse. Well, there are a couple of items in the Smithsonian from ancient Egypt that are definitely haunted. For starters, we have the scarab. This scarab is believed to be from King Tut's tomb. For starters, it is believed that bad luck will fall on anyone who handles King Tut's body or other artifacts in his tomb. Everything in there is believed to be cursed by King Tut himself. I'm sure you've heard of the story of Howard Carter and his team that excavated the tomb. After After doing so, several of the people involved died suddenly and mysteriously, so it's believed that this scarab is cursed along with the other items there. And then we have the mummified cat head. Yeah, you heard me. Now this one actually isn't from King Tut's tomb, but a woman named Mab B. Nylon donated a cat's head. Yeah, just the head. Who knows where the body is? Hey, maybe she kept it for herself and it's on display in her house. I'm not gonna judge. Anyways, this creepy thing is a preserved mummified cat's head wrapped in linen. Inside contains a real cat skull. Well, according to a number of workers, they have seen a ghostly cat apparition move around this display. This damn ghost cat is probably out looking for the rest of its body. This cat has also been seen wandering the halls and in several other exhibits as well. Moving on at number 2, we have the Black Aggie. This all started back in the 1800s when a woman named Marianne Hooper Adams, known by her friends as Clover, sunk into a terrible depression. As a result, she drank some of her photography developing chemicals and took her own life. After her death, her husband commissioned a sculptor to make a memorial statue of her. It was named the Adams Memorial, and later Black Aggie. But because of how it looked, people called it Grief. And that's when this creepy legend surrounding it was born. Legend goes that if you stare into her eyes long enough, they'll open up and start glowing red. Those that see her eyes will either be killed by her or she will cause you to go blind. Not only that, if you sit on the statue's lap at midnight, then you will die within 2 weeks. It's also said that pregnant ladies should never go near her. If they do, she will cause them to miscarry. Of course, this is just a creepy legend, right? Well, supposedly there's real life stories of this haunted statue taking people's lives. One man put a cigarette out on the statue's hand and he was later found dead with a gunshot wound to the head. Another man was found dead at the foot of the statue and no one knows his cause of death. Now, you may be wondering how the statue got to the Smithsonian. Well, because of the legend, a lot of people were breaking into the cemetery at night to visit it, and it was often vandalized. So the family donated it to the museum where it remains to this day.
In at 4 we have the Rain Woman. I don't know why anyone would want to own this piece of art strictly because of how creepy it is. Seriously, it's so uncomfortable to look at. The Rain Woman was painted by Ukrainian artist Svetlana Telets, and how this painting came about is unnerving to say the least. The artist apparently always felt like something or someone was always with her, just silently watching over her. One day, sitting in front of a blank canvas, Svetlana had the sudden urge to draw a woman, as if someone was guiding her hand. She said that the contours of her face, the shades, the colours, everything, she could see every little detail. The haunted painting was then put on the market and sold, but kept being returned by the different buyers. The first lady to purchase the Rain Woman promptly returned it, stating that she felt like there was someone else in her apartment with her. Buyer number 2 followed suit, complaining of a shadow woman at night tormenting him and driving him to the edge of madness. The third buyer, a self-proclaimed skeptic, also returned it after seeing a lady with white eyes everywhere. Haunted or not, this painting is certainly creepy and not something I'd want hanging in my house. In at number 3 we have Thomas Busby's stoop chair. Okay, so technically this haunted item isn't locked away per se, but simply hung up high in a museum in the UK to avoid any more deaths. Don't worry, I'll explain. The death chair is said to be plagued by a 300-year-old curse bestowed upon it by murderer Thomas Busby. In 1702, Busby brutally murdered his father-in-law for apparently sitting in his favourite chair without permission. He was convicted and sentenced to death, but before his final moments, he was granted a last wish. Of course, he chose to have a drink in his favourite chair. According to local legend, he said minutes before his execution, "Death shall come swiftly to anyone that dares to sit in my chair." Death came to him as he was promptly hanged, but it also came to those he wished it upon. For years, people who dared to sit in Busby's death chair would meet a grim fate. A chimney sweeper, numerous World War II soldiers, and a man staying at the Busby Stoop Inn are all among the victims of this centuries-old hex, but trust me, there are more. Tired of accidents being linked to Thomas Busby's oak chair, it was donated to a museum where it still is today. Rather than locking away the historic relic altogether, they decided to hang it high on the wall so that no one would ever suffer from it again. Coming in at number 2, we have the woman from Lem statue. Dubbed the goddess of death, the woman from Lem statue is said to be a depiction of a fertility goddess. So how did it go from a goddess said to bring life to one that takes it away? Well, you can thank another deadly curse for that. This ancient haunted relic was unearthed in 1878 in Lem, Cyprus, but its origins are much older than that, dating back to around 3500 BCE. The statue was carved from pure limestone, which has an interesting tie to the supernatural. Experts in the paranormal community believe that limestone is deeply connected to paranormal activity. The story of the alleged curse on this statue comes from the 4 families who previously owned it, all of which met an untimely fate. After the first man acquired the statue, all 7 members of his family died within 6 years. The second man had a similar experience, with his entire family dying within 4 years. This unfortunate pattern continued, and then the third family to own it died within 4 years as well. The woman from the Lem disappeared for a while until the 4th and final family suffered at the hands of it. Sir Alan Biverbrook, alongside his wife and 2 daughters, passed away. His 2 surviving sons donated the statue to the Royal Scottish Museum. The woman from the Lem remains today behind protective glass at that very museum. And finally, in at number 1, we have the Anguished Man. Is anyone really surprised that this piece of art is haunted? The Anguished Man, an oil painting created by an unknown artist, is rivaled by the likes of Annabelle and the Deic Box for the most haunted item in the world. Story goes that the artist who created the horrifying piece actually mixed his own blood into the paint. Shortly after finishing the painting, he took his own life. The current owner, Sean Robinson, says that his grandma gave it to him with the warning that it is extremely dangerous. Ripe with paranormal activity, the painting is believed to be the source of a string of traumatic experiences for Sean and his family when they had it stored in their home. Sean would wake up to see a faceless figure standing in his bedroom, and his wife once woke up to something lying in bed with her. But the final straw was when their son was violently pushed down the stairs. Sean began posting videos of their paranormal activity online and garnered tons of attention. Rumors that this haunted painting was up for sale circulated the internet a few years back. Thankfully, this couldn't be further from the truth, as the Anguished Man is still securely locked away to protect the world from its horrors. Coming in at number 5, we have the Tallman family's bunk beds. So the item itself doesn't sound very scary because it's just a bunk bed, but it was the source of intense terror and trauma for the Tallman family. In 1987, Ali and Debbie Tallman bought a bunk bed from a secondhand store and brought it to their home in Horicon, Wisconsin. They stored the bed in the basement until one day they decided to move it upstairs. From the moment someone slept in the bed, an evil entity was unleashed into their home and all hell broke loose. Their children, who were usually healthy, began falling sick for no apparent reason. The radio in the bedroom with the haunted bunk bed would turn on. The kids reported seeing a menacing old woman with long black hair and a fiery glow. Doors slammed open and they heard disembodied voices from empty rooms. Strange paranormal occurrences were running rampant. As the haunting intensified, the Tallmans enlisted their pastor for help with the dire situation. The pastor said that he felt the presence of evil and blessed their home. This was to no avail, and the Tallmans unfortunately continued to be tormented. In a fit of frustration, Alan shouted at the entity to pick on him and not his children. Challenge accepted, because shortly after he witnessed the orange glow of fire inside his garage with red eyes staring at him through the window. Then one night, while sleeping in the kids' room to protect them, a fog manifested out of the floor. It morphed into flames with green eyes, and a voice spoke out of it telling him, "You're dead." Enough was enough, and the Tallmans fled their home. The bunk bed was then buried in a landfill so no one would have to go through what the Tallman family did. The house still stands today, and reports of paranormal activity ceased once the bunk bed was removed. Coming in at number 4, the Basso Vase. Most people wouldn't mind being gifted a vase from Italy, especially one cast from silver in the 15th century, but the Basso Vase is said to be extremely haunted and cursed. The vase was apparently gifted to an Italian bride on her wedding night who lived in a small village close to Napoli. Her big day was ruined, however, when she was found dying on the floor with the vase in her hand, swearing to get revenge. The vase was then passed down to people in her family. With each new owner came another mysterious death, so the family locked it away. In 1988, the Basso Vase was found with a note inside that read, "Beware, this vase brings death." Ignoring the warning, the vase was then sold at an auction. 3 months later, the new owner was dead. The owner after that died 2 months later. After a string of mysterious deaths, the police decided to bury the vase somewhere no one would find it. It's said to still be hidden away even today. Whether the vase was cursed or it's the angry spirit of the bride, that's up for debate. All I know is that I'm glad this haunted relic is no longer in circulation. Coming in at number 3, Robert the Doll. Residing behind a glass barrier in a Florida museum is Robert the Doll. This little guy is one of the most haunted dolls in the world, and I think we can all agree that he's absolutely terrifying. While his little sailor outfit is cute, his worn and torn face is something only a mother could love. He's so haunted that he's said to cause car accidents, broken bones, divorces, and a plethora of other misfortunes. If you dare disrespect the doll by taking its picture without permission, he will curse you. This is why his exhibit is littered with letters from people begging for forgiveness. But before the century-old doll was confined to a life behind a protective barrier, he belonged to Robert Eugene Otto, who went by the name Gene. Gene's grandfather bought him the doll in Germany, and the pair were inseparable. Strange things started happening. Gene began having full-blown conversations with the doll. Many nights the family would be woken up by his screams, only to find a frightened Gene surrounded by overturned furniture and scattered toys. He insisted that Robert did it. Things would move around the house and stuff would break. Again, Gene insisted that Robert did it. His parents were skeptical but also unnerved by the strange events going on in the house. Even people who passed by the Otto house in Key West, Florida, claimed to see the doll peering out the window at them. Although Robert the Doll is now locked away in a museum, his apparent ability to curse people is still strong as ever. Those brave enough to visit him are urged to be careful, or else they might find themselves cursed by the haunted doll. Coming in at number 2, we have Deic Box. Known as the most haunted object in the world, this vintage wine cabinet is locked in a glass box at Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum. In fact, you have to be over 18 and sign a waiver just to set eyes on it. In Jewish folklore, a Deic is a malicious spirit with the ability to possess living people and use them for evil. These spirits can be trapped inside of a box to prevent this, which is why the Deic Box is supposedly home to an evil entity. The Deic Box was listed on eBay several years ago and it became a sensation. The seller, Kevin Manis, claimed to have purchased it from the estate of a woman who survived a World War II concentration camp. The woman's granddaughter, who was absolutely terrified of the box, warned him that her grandmother said it held the spirit of a Deic. Following his purchase, Kevin experienced a series of terrifying unexplained events. He would have nightmares of an old hag who would brutally attack him and then wake up covered in bruises. His mother also apparently suffered a stroke after opening the Deic Box. He decided to get rid of it for obvious reasons, and it eventually ended up in the hands of Zach Bagans for his museum. Museum goers can look at the Deic Box but can't touch it, and for good reasons. Post Malone did a private tour of the museum with Zach and found himself cursed by the evil spirit. Zach removed the protective glass around the haunted wine cabinet and decided to place his hands directly on it. Post Malone then touched Zach's shoulder, and that's all it took. In less than a month, his private jet was forced to make an emergency landing, his house was broken into by armed robbers, and then he got into a car accident. Safe to say that is one haunted relic that should stay locked away forever. And finally, in at number 1 we have Annabelle. In the number 1 spot is a doll so haunted, so notorious, and so creepy that she's had 3 horror movies made about her. The real Annabelle isn't actually a wide-eyed porcelain doll, but an innocent-looking Raggedy Ann who lives at Ed and Lorraine Warren's occult museum. But don't be fooled by her unassuming look, she's considered extremely haunted and dangerous. So haunted in fact that she permanently resides in a wooden box with a copy of the Lord's Prayer and a label reading, "Warning, positively do not open." In true Hollywood fashion, Annabelle's origin story was altered quite a bit. The real story of Annabelle started with 2 nurses who lived together as roommates in the 70s, when one was gifted the doll by her mother. Soon after, the girls began noticing that Annabelle would move on her own, finding her sitting in a different position and even in different rooms. The haunting escalated when they found parchment paper with the words "Help me" written in crayon scattered around their place. The girls didn't even own parchment paper. After more unexplained events, they decided to contact a medium who told them that the spirit of a 6 or 7-year-old girl named Annabelle died in the area around their apartment complex and was living inside of the doll. Things only got worse and Annabelle became violent with Lou, a boyfriend of one of the nurses. He claimed to have been strangled by the doll while sleeping and even suffered 7 claw-like slashes on his body after throwing her across the room on a separate occasion. Annabelle is known to be violent with people who dare to taunt her. Ed Warren believes that the doll is responsible for at least 1 death, that of a museum goer. According to the late paranormal investigator later, a young man and his girlfriend visited the occult museum. Stupidly, the man decided to mock Annabelle by tapping on the glass and telling her to scratch him like he scratched Lou. The couple was kicked out and the man died approximately 3 hours later when he lost control of his motorcycle and hit a tree. Although the Raggedy Ann doll is locked away behind a wooden box, complete with the Lord's Prayer, it seems that Annabelle's evil prowess simply cannot be contained.
Coming in number 5, a tiny hand. Mind you, this 5-fingered appendage doesn't truly belong to anyone. Rest assured, there is no petite individual walking around up there with a stub starting at their wrist. Or is there? Well, we haven't found any creatures with 5 fingers aside made of bronze yet, so as of right now this hand is totally its own thing. However, there's a lot to be gleaned from its existence. Plus, it was found in a titular, mysterious location and probably has some sort of magic imbued within. Could be cool, could be dangerous. That always seems to be the risk while working with the paranormal, eh? There are a few theories concerning the hand, none of which seem to imply a lack of bloodshed. Quite the opposite it seems. Lots and lots of bloodshed associated with the tiny bronze figurine. Makes sense, doesn't it? The metallic piece was picked up in the ancient Roman fortress of Vindolanda in England. If we know anything about the Romans, it's that they were peaceful, conflict-avoiding people. Just a little joke for you folks at home. Really though, there's not much likelihood that this hand was left behind for any reason other than the killing of many. Great. It may have been associated with the worship of a very mysterious cult, one that prayed to a lesser-known deity that seemed to guarantee conquest on the battlefield. Who knows what other weird activities this niche religious group got up to. Probably nothing too healthy or friendly. There's also the idea that this was left behind as an offering to a god, maybe that of the cult, after a major invasion of what would become Scotland. This invasion turned into more of a slaughter, with historians estimating that thousands of tribespeople living in the area now known as Scotland were killed. There were talks of peace, but those on the Scottish side made some last-minute changes, resulting in them being labeled rebels. So after the Roman army plowed through and took their revenge, this hand of God was left behind as an offering to the powers that allowed them to win so decisively. Holding onto this tiny hand now might cause the souls of thousands of ancient Scots to look negatively upon you. Don't know if that sounds like a whole lot of fun. Coming in number 4, the Hands Resist Him painting. Now this already sounds very creepy, and one look at the painting confirms that it is. It's unsettling on a whole other level. Goodness me. You might have heard about this one already, as it made some waves when first discovered. In fact, some gave it the nickname the Haunted eBay painting, which is a great title for anything you can purchase. Tell me you wouldn't want to hang that over your mantle and tell everyone who came by about your haunted eBay painting. You'd be the talk of the town in no time, with kids running past your yard at full speed and spooky widows dropping by for tea. Someday. But in the meantime, you can learn of the story behind the Hands Resist Him painting. See, it was dredged up at an old rundown brewery. A couple had been looking through the ruins for whatever people look through old breweries for and came across this horrid image. 2 children, creepy as can be, looking straight at the portrait artist, as some disembodied hands seem to float in the window behind them. Man, plenty of hands without arms on the list today. Must be a sign. Who's gonna send a nice hand into the studio? Look at the little girl's face. Are those doll features? Has her soul been stolen? Answers we may never get. During this painting's time on eBay, folks came up with all sorts of stories to go along with it. Some said that the kids would move around in frame, taking on different poses and positions when folks weren't looking. The hands were known to switch up their positioning too. All in all, a very distressing combination of paint and canvas. It ended up selling for something like $1,000, which is a little low if you ask me. Somehow, the stories caught up to the original painter too, who was quite surprised that everyone had been spinning yarns about his work. Bill Stoneham, the artist, says that the piece was based on an old photograph of himself and a neighbor when they were children, and that he wanted to tap into the Jungian idea of the collectus unconscious. So it might not be haunted, or at least it wasn't when he painted it, but the stories people tell seem to imply otherwise, so we'll see. Coming in at number 3, we've got the Tomb of Simon McTavish. I want to tell this story specifically because I was recently hiking Mount Royal. Maybe I walked by something exceptionally haunted and didn't even notice. Wouldn't be too out of character, that's for sure. However, what was discovered quite a while ago spooks locals to their core. Mount Royal is a lovely elevated plateau that overlooks the city of Montreal and is home to one of the largest intact burial grounds in North America. Plenty of haunted potential here, but there's one ghost in particular that really grabs people's attentions, and it's the ghost of one Simon McTavish. A fur baron with a short temper, McTavish wasn't exactly well liked. He was overseeing the construction of his magnificent castle, and he suddenly died and was placed in a lavish tomb. His ghost stuck around though, spooking his neighbors plenty. So they did what any rational group of people would do and collapsed his castle to bury the tomb. Years later though, archaeologists rediscovered this buried tomb, and now folks believe that his ghost is free once more, zipping along the mountainside. Coming in at number 2, we've got the Haunted Child Spirit Doll. Haunted dolls are so in right now, eh? What other cursed item warrants an entire movie series complete with merchandise, books, and a totally redesigned Annabelle? This one isn't nearly as famous as Robert the Doll or the aforementioned Conjuring spin-off though. However, that doesn't make it any less haunted or any less scary. Back when buying all sorts of supposedly haunted items on eBay was all the rage, this doll caught a whole bunch of eyes and garnered plenty of attention. The story goes like this. A family moved into a home built in the 1920s and they found all sorts of interesting things inside. One particularly fascinating find was an old baby doll. They didn't know how long it had been there or who it belonged to, but boy did it give off some wicked vibes. Soon after discovering this doll, odd happenings started up. Electronic toys would power on with nobody to do so, doors would swing open without anybody around, children in the house would experience vivid nightmares, disembodied footsteps could be heard, and ghosts of old men and women were spotted in the basement. Holy moly. The seller left a little disclaimer saying that she can't take responsibility for whoever buys it, but it did indeed sell. Final asking price? $57.50. Huh. I would have thought a genuine haunted doll would go for a little more. Maybe with a more sensational backstory. We'll see where it goes next. And coming in at number 1, we've got the Black Sarcophagus. See if you can come to a similar conclusion as me here. Back in 2018, a mystery tomb was discovered in Alexandria. Delving deep within, archaeologists pulled out a very cursed-looking black sarcophagus. When announced to the world, all sorts of theories about the dark stone coffin proliferated. Could it be sealing away an ancient enemy of the people? Is some sort of cryptid contained within? What if opening this unleashed a curse upon the world, dooming us forever? The folks in charge of it decided that no risk outweighed potential discovery, so they popped it open. Inside lay the remains of 3 officers and some goopy liquid. Maybe not so bad. But I lean towards that curse more than anything else. Why would the sarcophagus be the color of classical evil if not to contain said evil? What world-ending curse could have popped out? Well, it might have been a spell that awakens some horrible beast, still regaining its strength. Or maybe it brainwashes some powerful people, instilling eldritch knowledge and a hatred of humanity in them. Or could it be that the curse will show up in the form of a plague? 2018, huh? Let that one marinate for a while.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Haunted Diic Box. Deic Boxes are known to contain a malicious spirit that can and will possess you. In Jewish mythology, a Deic is a malicious spirit that is said to be a disturbed soul of a deceased person. So basically, you don't want to be fooling around with these spirits or boxes. But of course, eBay has many listed for sale on there. Let's take a look at this one particular box. The seller said that he got the box off of an elderly man in South Carolina. In fact, he apparently collects Deic boxes. Anyways, his collection was getting so big that he put it in his crawl space. After doing so, he said it sounded like someone was moving quickly underneath his house. Every day at 3 a.m. he would hear this terrifying noise. Whenever he goes down to check on the box, he feels a cool, heavy air surrounding it. On top of that, his dog often growls at the box and the crawl space. Lastly, he said he heard knocking and children's whispers coming from the box. Due to this reason, he decided to sell the box on eBay. But he was only looking to sell it to an experienced collector, someone that knows how to handle this box and won't just purchase it for fun and then fool around with it. Because the last thing we need is someone buying it as a joke and then the spirit gets out and goes around possessing people. No thank you, 2021 is already bad enough. And in the end, it ended up selling for $39.99. Kind of a steal, not gonna lie. Moving on to number 4, we have the Haunted Teddy Bears. So in part 1, I talked about the haunted dolls that infest eBay. Seriously, there's way too many of them. Well, guess what? Apparently, there's an abundance of haunted bears on eBay as well. Isn't that great? This first bear is apparently haunted by a little blonde boy named Oliver. Oliver likes to move the teddy bear around, so you might set it down in one place and in the morning it could be in a completely different place. The seller even apparently used an Ouija board to contact the spirit possessing the bear. That's when they learned that the boy possessing it was named Oliver and that he is shy, playful, but also scared. Apparently, according to Oliver, he got the bear for his 10th birthday as a gift. But soon his parents were like, whoa, that bear is possessed, we need to get rid of it. Then whatever was possessing the bear originally ended up killing Oliver, and then Oliver got latched onto the bear. What a freaking messed up story. Another haunted bear is this one. It can be bought for only 16 pounds, but it's possessed by a little girl named Sarah. According to the paranormal investigator and collector who once owned this bear, Sarah went missing from an adventure playground one day and was never found. Later, it was discovered that Sarah's mom was using this bear to speak to her dead daughter. The seller of this bear also went on to say that Sarah likes to communicate through EVP, and on a number of occasions she has moved the bear, especially on April 28th, the anniversary of her death. That's when the paranormal activity is most active. In our third spot today, we have the haunted tap shoes. Imagine you're drifting off to sleep when all of a sudden you hear something tapping on the floor beneath you. I'd be terrified and I wouldn't be able to fall back to sleep after that. Well, that's exactly what happened to the person that discovered these haunted tap shoes. According to the seller, the shoes were in a nursery closet in their late aunt's estate. When they first were exploring the estate, they heard knocking coming from inside the closet. They opened it up and boom, that's where the shoes were. They then took them home. First off, why? Second off, why? Anyways, they did, and that's when they heard the shoes tap dancing in the middle of the night. Later, it was revealed that the shoes were haunted by a girl named Lisa. Now, it didn't say how much they sold for, but seriously, unless you're Ed or Lorraine Warren, why would you want to buy any of these haunted items? Especially shoes that are gonna wake you up in the middle of the night when you're just trying to sleep peacefully. In our second spot, we have the Memoir Box. Right away, you can tell by looking at this image that all of those items are cursed. Like, what are we even looking at? It looks like a serial killer's keepsafe box. Apparently though, it's an old memoir box found inside of an old Victorian home during an estate sale. For some reason, the people touring the estate went up to the attic and came across this box, along with some old children's clothes and scrapbooks. I'ma stop myself right there. So, for starters, they go to an estate sale and they're like, let's not go to the kitchen to check for some fine china. No, let's go to the attic and see what dusty old creepy things they got up there. Like, what? Anyways, and then they found it and decided to take it back with them. A box with other people's hair in it. Yeah, that seems normal. I hope they didn't actually spend money on that. Anyways, the box was filled with random stuff like a tin monkey, locks of hair, small pieces of paper, and some books. On one of the locks of hair, there's a small slip of pink paper that reads, "Died March 14th, 1920, Little Edgar." Even after discovering that, the person still bought this from the estate sale. Now, apparently they had every intention on keeping it, until the box started freaking them out. The seller's dog would just stare randomly at this one corner in their room. It also wouldn't even go near the box at all. So he ended up listing it on eBay for someone else to love. How about we just, let the spirit live in peace, or like, I don't know, donate it to a museum? What do you even do when you have something like that? Just stop buying and selling haunted objects on eBay, honestly. And in our number one spot today, we have the statue. According to the seller, their friend got this statue back in the 1980s. He used to have a job doing brick yard work, and then what he would do was take the unhardened clay, and during his time off, he would sculpt and paint them. Some of the other workers would do the same thing as well. This particular statue was made by a man named William. He claimed that the bust was a self-portrait. Well, sadly, that very day, William was involved in a tragic accident and he got crushed to death. His spirit apparently then latched onto his sculpture. The seller saw his friend's sculpture and decided to take it home with him, preserve the memory of his friend instead of just throwing it out. But that night, he woke up to the sound of someone walking around his house in circles. He checked his home, but no one was there. Later on, other weird things started to happen, like he would hear doors slam shut, only to find no door had actually closed. The scariest thing though is when one night he saw a dark mist moving in his den. He walked in and the room felt heavy and uninviting. Later he realized it was the statue causing all these problems when he noticed his dogs wouldn't go near the statue and refused to even look at it. So that's when he decided to list it up on good old eBay, so someone else's dogs can be spooked by it. So in conclusion, as tempting as it may seem to buy a haunted item off of eBay, maybe don't, just leave it to the professionals. Starting off this countdown, we have Jeffrey Dahmer's jacket. Yeah, you heard me correctly. Someone once owned infamous serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer's jacket. The seller, Plagle41, claimed that he was in the same class at Dahmer at Revere High in Bath, Ohio. In senior year, the seller was doing a comedy act and needed an army jacket for the sketch. They didn't have one, but Jeffrey was like, oh hold up, I got one, and went to his car and returned with the jacket in hand. The seller used it for the performance, and after the show, Jeffrey said for him just to keep the jacket. Kinda makes me wonder, was that for sure Jeffrey's jacket, or was it one of his many victims' jacket? Like, why was he so willing to give it away? Probably because it was evidence linking him to one of his victims, so he was like, nah, you keep it. I mean, I'm just stretching here, but you never know. Anyways, the seller was cleaning up his family's home when he found the jacket in one of the bins. Obviously, by this point, he knew what Jeffrey had done, so his family wanted him to get rid of it and all the bad juju surrounding it. In the end, this jacket ended up selling for $150. In our fourth spot, we have the haunted dolls. I swear, there is a whole section on eBay just for haunted dolls. It's insane. There are hundreds of them. You know, I've seen the movie Annabelle, and no thanks, I'm never buying one. I don't want to risk it. But apparently to paranormal collectors, this is heaven to them. For example, one seller, AkiJ25, was selling a haunted doll, Dakota Spirit Child, that is apparently very active. It also came with a warning saying only people experienced with the paranormal can buy this item. According to the seller, the doll is haunted by the spirit of a child named Dakota, who was murdered by his mom. The doll has been known to break mirrors and gets quite angry at times. Now, fun fact, apparently eBay has a rule that you can't sell anything that offers someone's soul, like selling something that claims to have someone's soul attached to it. You can't do that. So what these buyers do is put a little disclaimer that says, for entertainment purposes only, but that's a lie, and they only do it to prevent their items from being removed. Now, let's take a look at some of the creepiest dolls I found on eBay. For starters, we got this gem, the Haunted Vintage Antique Evil Active Possessed Witch Demon doll. And of course, they photographed this doll on a Ouija board because why not? I mean, it is fitting. Anyways, this one is being sold for $100 US. What a steal. Then we have this one, the Haunted 16-inch Spiritual Doll Spirit Vessel. And apparently it has supernatural paranormal powers. Honestly, Victorian dolls like this creep me the hell out, so no thank you. But hey, if you're interested in this doll, it's cheaper than the other one. And last but not least, and creepiest of all, we have this doll that I swear, if you stare at too long, she will suck out your soul. This is the Haunted 16-inch Spiritual Doll Spirit Vessel that also has supernatural and paranormal powers. Like, look at it, that one is for sure haunted. And the winning freaking bid was $5,600. Like, are you kidding me? You're literally paying to get possessed. Moving on, at number 3 we have the Hands Resist Him. Now, since this is a horror channel, chances are you probably heard of this haunted painting. That's because this painting is known to be one of the most haunted paintings in the world. So the story goes that this painting was created in 1972 by an artist named Bill Stoneham. Over the years, it has been bought and sold on eBay by a number of buyers and sellers. No one wants to keep it for themselves. Why? Because of how terrifyingly haunted it is. It first appeared on eBay in 2000. The seller said they needed it gone ASAP because it was terrorizing their family. The seller went on to say that their daughter was most affected by it. Their daughter said that the boy and the doll in the picture would fight each other at night, whatever that means. But they also got eerie vibes around the painting, so they set up a motion sensing camera for 3 nights just monitoring the painting. The camera captured the boy leaving the frickin' painting, or so they claim. So she sold it. The next seller said the painting made them feel ill or dizzy whenever they were around it. So they sold it. The next seller said they heard an exorcist type voice after viewing the painting. They sold it, and so on, you get it. But it seems as if children are most affected by the painting, and it will haunt them in their dreams. As a result, no one wants to own it. Nowadays, it's displayed in an art gallery in Beverly Hills. Moving on at number 2, we have the haunted doll carriage. This next story is gonna give you the creeps. Plus, it happened a couple months ago, so it's really recent. Basically, a family in Brandon, Missouri was gifted an antique doll carriage for their daughter for Christmas. Whitney Merritt, the mom, said the carriage was gifted to them from her mom, who got it from a friend of a friend. They probably all knew it was haunted and just needed someone to pawn it off to. Anyways, as soon as they received the carriage, spooky things started to happen around their house. It started with the knocking. Every so often they would hear creepy knocking on their walls. One night it got so bad they literally thought someone was in their attic walking around. But when they got up there, the knocking stopped and no one was there. This lasted for a week. The second week is when the paranormal activity picked up. They would wake up in the middle of the night to sounds of stuff being knocked over. When they investigated, they found shattered mugs all in their kitchen. This entity broke several mugs in the family's home. They even would slam dishes in the sink. The third week is when it got the worst. That's when Whitney actually saw the spirit that was attached to the carriage. She was chillin' when she saw a person walk past the door and into the kitchen. She turned quickly and the entity disappeared. Now, they never knew what was haunting them until they realized that the paranormal activity started as soon as they received that damn carriage. So they were like, F that, and they took it and they stuck it outside, and guess what? The paranormal activity stopped. That's when they decided to list it on eBay. When she did, someone came forward and told her the backstory of the carriage. Apparently, the carriage was once owned by a woman whose husband died in a motorcycle accident, and it's thought that his spirit is the one that's attached to it. Whitney strongly believes that that's the entity she saw in her kitchen. In the end, the carriage was listed for $65, but after a bidding war, someone purchased it for $710. Again, that person is just paying to get haunted. I literally don't get it. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Haunted Watch. What time is it? Spooky time. I know, that was lame, but it made me laugh. Anyways, when I saw this listing, I literally got shivers down my spine. So it was listed as Haunted Watch stuck at 11:29 p.m. According to the seller, the person they received that watch from told them that a 24-year-old woman named Julie once owned the watch. One day she was headed out for a run, so she took the watch off and placed it on her nightstand. But Julie never returned home. She ended up getting kidnapped while on her run. The man that kidnapped her ended up killing her at 11:29 p.m. The exact same time that that watch is now stuck at. That is the scariest thing that I've ever heard. But wait, there's more. The buyer took the watch to a medium to see if the seller was lying, or like what the deal with it was. Without telling the medium anything about the watch, the medium said that a woman named Julie is attached to it. That's insane. The seller also said that whenever they go near it, the temperature around them drops, even in the hottest weather. In the end, they listed it on eBay and sold it for only $17.50, the cheapest item on this list, but also the creepiest.